So far, from your experience, and I know kind of with talking to people on ground, how have the interactions been like with African Americans, for example, with those on the continent? Like, are they getting along well? Like, how does that look like?
That's a good point. That's a good point, and that's also, a socio-economic, can be a socio-economic problem. If there isn't a good
Yeah.
mix as well, because although we are all brothers and sisters, we have been, torn apart for the most part,
Right.
and are now sort of we see a lot of the similarities with each other, but of course, at times as well there are differences with the way in which we're brought up, we think about the world, etc.
Hmm.
But I think for the most part, it's matching quite well. What you find is, and obviously it might also depend on country to country. Maybe Ghanaians are just more agreeable people as well. You know, most right. And so like to joke around any issue, right?
Hmm.
But for the most part, I think it's what I usually hear. Obviously, the common things. Why is the food taking so long? Why are there potholes? Yeah, say those are
Right.
the common things I hear. I think I will say this though. And of course, sometimes there's some bribery issues and whatnot. Although I think sometimes they like that. I'm not going to lie to you. They like that they can just pay for something,
Oh
fast
gosh.
track it, and move forward. I pay you on this one, something for the boys. And move forward,
Right.
right? But I think what we have to look like really strongly at though is not to create two different classes of people, right? And I
Mm.
think that will be that's why it needs to be executed right. Because at the end of the day, yes, what I want, what I let's say, even I personally, I'm envisioning or would like to see, in the medium term is, you're creating some great developments where diasporans can come live there, invest, etc. But what I want that needs to do is create jobs in and around it, right?
Hmm.
Which of course then locals can then also gain an income where they can rent or begin to sort of build or buy their own more affordable homes, which is usually the issue. Like, what is really affordable? At the end of the day, people need to make money to a certain level. Because how cheap can you make a home is the question usually, or a good home, let me say, right? And you really, the cheapest I've found a good enough home is about 35,000 to 40,000 dollars, right? And that's still not very cheap for a lot of people at all, right? Most of a lot of people in Ghana, 50% cannot afford that today, right? And so what you will need to do is create jobs in and around it. And so people buy more real estate, living in Ghana will create organically jobs. And then from there, it's about creating real industry, right? And I think that's still diaspora, right? And so, whether it's investing in building a plant, doing something tech related, even getting into politics, whatever it is, if you are there to then serve the country, then it helps. So what you're hoping for is you're getting some good people with, good in their heart to invest in Ghana, to live there, and then to then sort of, try and even selfishly for their own benefit, try and get the country to a much higher level as well. And what you hope that does is it creates also the elevation of the locals as well, so that there are not two different classes. Because definitely what you don't want is two different classes of people where you hear an accent or whatever, and you almost then assume that this person has a lot more money than you do, right? And that's what you don't want, right? And so I think that's what we have to look out for. Yeah.
Man, Kweku, I mean, I think this was like a very powerful conversation. Like, you've shared so much insight that I didn't even think about. Like, even that last point about being careful about not creating, different classes of
Yeah.
people. Because I know, again, even for those of us, like when we go back home, I mean, I don't know if it's the same for you, but like for me, obviously, my accent doesn't sound too much like, I've been here. I came here when I was a kid, when I was 4. So I've been here for a long time now. So going back home, my experience and the way I might interact with people back home, they would probably still treat me very much
Yeah, yeah.
American. So I know it'll definitely be worse for those who, So yeah, I mean, that's powerful. I love that. And I would love to, really continue this conversation, at a different point as you, get more research and as you kind of continue doing what you're doing. And I just want to give you kudos for what you're doing. I think it's amazing. Like I've told you before, And I know as we're wrapping up now, could you just kind of, I guess, tell our listeners and our viewers, how they can connect with you? I know you told us about what the next steps would be as far as like going to your website and everything, but if you can just maybe leave us with a few maybe words of wisdom or anything that you might want to say, and then how they can connect.
Yeah, I don't know how much wisdom I have. I'll try. I'll try. But no, thank you very, very much for this opportunity, and thank you to your audience as well for listening. Um, for me, it was almost like an epiphany that just told me that really at the end of the day, you're supposed to be in Ghana in particular. You're supposed to be in the continent as a whole, and it's I'm very happy that I finally really got to see the beauty of it. I did I had a great childhood, and you forget that sometimes while yearning for something else. You sometimes forget what's out there for you, and certainly the content has a lot of issues. Let's be very real, but those are all opportunities as well. Each and every issue there, and so for me, and to you all, obviously I am very focused on real estate. There are a lot of different sectors there, but I think real estate is the core issue, and I will say that every day. Once you solve that issue of land, I think you pretty much solve pretty much all issues, right? Once people are able to utilize their land efficiently, it creates wealth, and it also creates a certain level of order that allows people to do what they need to do. I'll give one example of this, which people don't even think about. But one of our investors, a Japanese individual, in his previous job, he was working for a manufacturing company that was looking to set up a plant in Ghana. It took him 2 years to find land. That's because he would go find land and he realizes it's in court, or he would find land and there'd be some legal issue. And so it took him 2 years to find land. And I'm actually not even sure if they even went through the project, right? After 2 years, people get tired, they get over it, they don't want to continue, right? And so that is what creates this perception over time, where then maybe 10 years from now, that the same investor might want to do it again. They might want to create a plant, and he might say, forget about it. I tried this 2 years ago, it was too much work, and so I'm not going to do it again. And so we want to change that narrative and that perception through real estate. And I think once you get solved that aspect, I think we solve a lot of issues. So yeah, you can obviously, the website is right there. You can also find me on LinkedIn. You can find my name there. You can find me on LinkedIn, or info@seso.global as well. You can find us through there. And again, really thank you very much for the time. And yeah, looking forward to seeing any of you in Ghana, maybe at some point, or in some other African countries. So yeah, cheers.